about. We have, as always, one of our favorites, Charles Tasso, our COO and Director of Legislative Affairs. He's going to be updating us on what's happening with a few different things. Also, some updates on the relief packages. Also with him is going to be Matt Keelen, President of the Keelen Group. And back again is Kevin Coughlin, President of the Lexington Companies. And then afterwards, we're going to be having our favorite two people from Home Depot, Brian and Randall, and they're going to be answering some questions about the Home Depot programs. So you guys will be able to ask questions as well. And then at the very end, I believe we're going to be having another special guest, Mr. Larry Goins. And I'll let him announce what he's going to talk to you guys about today. So I'm going to turn this over to our director, Rebecca McLean.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I want to start out by saying thank you to the Home Depot, and I'm so excited having them on the call today. They are our broadcast sponsor, and they are one of our favorite Tier 1 vendors. I know it's certainly one of our most used programs because they have special programs for investors. It includes things like discounts on paint up to 20% off, rebates that are specific to us, and other exclusive programs for National RIA members. And they're going to tell you a little bit more about how to use those and especially how to take advantage of some things during this COVID situation. For those of you who don't know about National RIA, our mission is to promote, protect, and educate. We're a nonprofit association, been around over 35 years now. We have over 120 local associations and over 40,000 members nationwide. And we are here to serve the real estate investor and the industry, the communities in which we all invest. And I want to say a huge thank you to everyone on the call today. Thank you for attending the seminars with us, the updates that we're having, and thank you for being a member of your local RIA. I know now is more important than ever to stay connected, and we appreciate your being with us. We have developed a place on the site for COVID updates, but if you are not a member of a local group, we definitely want to encourage you to do so. You can find a local group by just clicking on this button on the National RIA site. The COVID updates will be posted. We've been doing them as soon as updates have arrived, almost daily at this point. So you can click on that. It will take you to the page where you see the information updated, and then we have specific information for articles and things like that down below. So that page is just full of information for you. Today, we want to talk about all of the updates available. And I know many of you are kind of getting information about a potential rent strike that is happening. And Charles is going to fill you in on some of those things. But we wanted to also bring you up to date on some of the work that NAA is doing to help negate some of the messages that are out there about rental owners and how maybe we are not contributing to the economy as much as we should in this situation by people who think that maybe they shouldn't pay their rent. And so NAA has developed what I think is an amazing infographic with the information that they have, and it shows where every dollar of rent, how that is divided. Only 9 cents of that comes back to the rental property owner. Approximately 39 cents go to the mortgage and the payment for the property. 10 cents is for capital expenditures. 27 cents covers payroll expenses for that property, and 14 cents goes to property taxes, which of course finances schools, teachers, emergency services, and other local needs. So the importance of rent, it cannot be overstated. And I know Charles is going to talk more about that, but I wanted to point out that this infographic exists. It would be great to share on your own site. It's on the National RIA site, and he'll talk more about that as we go. Just a quick disclaimer before we get into any of the updates. None of us is legal professionals that I'm aware of, and even if we are, we're not giving any kind of specific legal advice or tax advice on this call. If you have questions about that, make sure that you consult with those in your local community that understand your area and your business. So all of that being said, Charles, I am going to turn it over to you now and let you give us some updates about some of the new legislative happenings.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I'm going to jump right in on the issue you mentioned, first of all, which is the rent strike issue. And this is an issue that it makes my blood boil on one side, because and I've had some interviews with some folks, and one young lady, as they say in the South, bless her soul, she was offended that I referred to I referred to a rent strike as economically naive. But she said, but their income disappeared, so everything just needs to go away. I said, so grocery stores are going to start giving away food. We can go get cars and trucks if we want. Everything's for free. Utilities. Well, no. I said, okay, then. And what we do is started talking about painting a picture. And this is something I want not only individuals, but please keep this in mind, especially as leaders. When you're dealing with a reporter or somebody starting to ask questions about the rent, share with them the infographic that Rebecca just had that's on our website, but then also share with them the fact that, these are essential employees that are being paid through this. That 27 cents that goes back into payments, and contractors, somebody who's going to actually come in and fix to make sure that your unit is working, your home is working, your duplex is working. Those are the kinds of things that we want to make sure we're representing honestly and upfront. But the simple fact is, these people are essential workers, and they're paid through the rent. And not only is that a key concern, and something else we've been bringing up is the simple fact that beyond just this crisis, which is a most likely 1 to 3 month, maybe 4 month crisis, as we start to open up, if we let this become a situation where we start reaching mortgage deficiencies and mortgage defaults, and the mortgage default numbers start climbing, we're going to go right back to hearing terms about tranches and mortgages at the federal, or I should say at the Wall Street level, starting to crash. And that's a problem. Now we start getting into a actual catastrophic financial situation. And so the idea is not to let that happen. On our website, we have our voter voice piece push, which is a action item. And this is to encourage Congress in this CARES 2 program that they're working on right now. And it'll be the 5th piece of legislation move forward. But in this piece of legislation, the idea is, quite frankly, make sure that there's rental assistance in there for people who need it. And the reason we say that is because if the rental assistance comes through, and we've had some really good response rates for April, but everybody's saying May might be worse. And we're all kind of expecting May to be worse. And that means that you need to be ready for next week, when there may be press people asking questions, TVs asking questions, magazines, newspapers. Everybody's going to be asking the question, how do we pay May's rent? And there's going to be sob stories out there. There's going to be situations like that. Make sure you're communicating with your folks. Get letters out early. Be able to share letters or examples of those letters saying, hey, here's how we're reaching out. Here's how we're trying to make sure that we're all getting through this together. Then you can start talking about the whole idea of now we're into mortgage assistance, rent assistance, and we want Congress to really help these folks. Now, the fact is, there's been some help out there. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I know it's been difficult sometimes to hire employees right now, not only for the COVID side of it and social distancing, but when I've got employees who can make more money on unemployment than they can getting paid, that's a problem. And hopefully that's a short-term problem that gets rectified soon, but the additional funds, the unemployment, the stimulus, those are out there to get people through. And that is something we can point to say, look, those funds are out there. So if somebody is not spending their money on their rent and their food and their medical, what are they spending it on? Because more than enough funds have come down for individuals to be able to be taken care of. So that's kind of where I want to start off with. And I'm going to ask a couple of folks to jump in here. I asked Matt Keelen, who is our DC lobbyist with the Keelen Group, and his partner, Stephen Borg. Now, Keelen is on the title there, so that tells everybody who owns a business, that Stephen's doing the work. So I'll say that up front. So, but I want to ask Matt and Stephen to just kind of chime in a little bit, tell us a little bit about kind of what's going on in Washington right now. What's a little bit of the behind the scenes, the flavor, the tension, as it were, because there's more than a little bit of tension going on. but then also a little bit about some of the bills that are just coming out and what you're seeing going forward.
Hey, Charles, thank you. And you are dead on with who does most of the work at this company for sure. Steve's been just working his butt off trying to go through these bills and make sure our clients are up to date on what's going on. So I'll take kind of the 30,000 foot level and let Steve get into some of the legislation. It's interesting when you look at the last month, the reaction of Congress, which has been unanimous over that point of time, which isn't typical when it comes to particularly anything to do with legislation or politics in Washington, D.C. in 2020. So while the sausage making sometimes has gotten ugly and been a little bit delayed, I think some people would agree that it could have gotten done a little bit quicker. They did come around to unanimous consent. So the government is really trying to help both on the healthcare crisis, which is the number one thing that they're looking at right now, and then also the economic crisis that the reaction to the health crisis has left us with. And I think you made a great point earlier on an individual basis. I think about half of those checks to the IRS have gone out, with the other half should be out by about Wednesday. Obviously, the small business PPP program was a little bit rough around the edges when it got started a couple of weeks ago. The money certainly was there, but some people probably ended up with those loans that wouldn't qualify as quote unquote small business. Some of those businesses are already starting to give, the multiple $1 million back because they don't want the public backlash that has ensued since then. It's a weird time. The last time I can remember it being like this in Washington, D.C. is post September 11th, where if you walk around Capitol Hill right now, there is literally nobody. They came in yesterday, voted. It was a staggered vote. So not to have too many people on the floor. It is likely they won't get back to anything operating with a full Congress until the probably second week of of May. And that will probably be staggered as well. There's obviously tension between Speaker Pelosi and Minority Leader Schumer and President Trump, and mostly Mitch McConnell, on how to get these things taken care of. And you're starting to see some of the other tension play out between governors and local officials on when to reopen, with, I think, the mounting pressure starting to come from folks, regular Americans, to slowly but steadily start opening the economy back up. I think a lot of folks, particularly in small business community, feel like currently the cure might be worse than the actual healthcare crisis. And as long as we do things the right way, as far as making sure the most vulnerable are protected, that getting people back into the workforce is critical, really, to the future of the economy. It's kind of weird to think about it, but less than 6 weeks ago, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country, and probably one of the greatest ones in the world. I do think we could get it back relatively quickly, but there's gonna be some starts and stops. And I think one of the things that has helped over the course of the last 6 weeks is when somebody in the political process starts to veer off course and starts to be maybe a little bit too political, they do get slapped around pretty quickly by constituents back home who want a serious response from the government, but one that is measured, both in the sense of taking on the healthcare crisis that COVID-19 is, but also not destroying the economy. If you look at, how many people could be put out of work and not be able to put food on their table, not be able to pay their rent because of the virus, it starts to get pretty stark pretty quickly. And the good news is that over the last week, for sure, with more testing and particularly the antibody testing that is going on, the death rate has gone down considerably. And I think a lot more people will find out that they've had this thing that didn't know it, didn't go through the terrible symptoms that others have. And hopefully that'll get people back into the workforce more quickly. With that, I think it'd probably be helpful if Steve kind of gave a quick version of what is in the latest bill. I've been told already that hopefully by this weekend, some of those loans might be hitting people that are in the queue. And like I said, unfortunately, it looks like some of our lenders put their bigger customers up front, and some of the smaller guys and gals got pushed to the back. And I think that this tranche of that money is going to fix that problem.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the kind words from both you and Charles. As you can tell, I haven't quite figured out the lighting situation on Zoom calls quite yet, so I apologize if I look like I'm in the Batcave. But yeah.
Well, Stephen, don't worry about it, because I got told I had to put a hat on because I was blinding everybody. So, you know, we all learn through the process here. As we
Different
get
lighting
stuff,
problems.
So.
There you go.
All right.
So as Matt and Charles mentioned, one of the biggest pieces of the pie in the third package that Congress and the administration put together was the Paycheck Protection Program. Technically, it's a new loan program to small businesses, but there are certain criteria, mainly surrounding keeping employees on payroll or quickly rehiring them, that can make that loan forgivable and in all sense of the word, turn it into a grant that does not need to be paid back. As Matt mentioned, that $310 billion that was in the original bill went out the door very quickly. The program ran out of funds relatively in about a week and a half, if not then, and Congress realized that they needed to do a lot more. So this week, actually, the president just signed it earlier today. Congress passed another appropriations bill that would provide a little over $320 billion more into the PPP program, bringing the grand total up to just over $670 billion for that program. So as Matt mentioned, a lot of the people that had applications in for the PPP program that were waiting for those should hopefully be getting money released really quickly.
And if I can jump in on you, Stephen, real quick on that. Yep. And one of the things we want to reiterate to members is, if you've been in the process for the PPP or you already have an application in, it's not too late to try to get an application in, but you better get it done ASAP, because everybody who's already had an application in and was told that the funds were gone, you're still in line. You do not have to refile. As the funds come through, SBA has supposedly still been processing. So if you get any questions back at all, please make sure you respond to them, because these funds will not last very long. Initially, they were saying there's $1 trillion request. They gave about 349 billion the first time. Estimated, what was it, 320 this time? So that everybody knows, even with my public math, you know, that doesn't, we're not going to get to $1 trillion, and that number is continuing to grow. So if you've got funds in, or you've got requests in for funds, keep pushing on it, make sure it's moving forward.
Thanks, Charles. And to that point, you know, as Charles mentioned, if you haven't applied yet, I wanted to reiterate that this program is actually run through about 800. They're in the process of trying to certify more financial institutions, but there's about 800 SBA approved financial institutions throughout the country currently. And this PPP program and the applications are all run through those financial institutions. So if you are looking to apply and you haven't yet, make sure that you're going through your local financial institutions for that program, because that's not run through the SBA directly. Also, related to the first, they're calling the CARES Act package number 3, this bill that was just signed by the president. A lot of people are calling 3.5 because it really didn't do anything new other than fill back up the coffers. But another small business opportunity that was included in 3, and then more funding was provided in 3.5, is the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which is a program that's been around for many years, but it covers businesses and cooperatives that are having extreme economic injury due to a disaster. And since the president declared this a national disaster, they opened up funds through EIDL. The first round, they gave $10 billion into that loan program. This 3.5 bill that was just signed in earlier today gave another $10 billion. That gives SBA was authorized to advance as much as $10,000 to EIDL recipients to pay for the new paid sick leave, to retain their employees, and to make other covered payments that they need. And while the PPP program is run through those financial institutions, the EIDL program is actually run directly through SBA. So if you're interested in learning more about that or finding an application for that, if you go to sba.gov, they have a whole COVID-19 website just directed specifically towards all the resources they have, including applications to the EIDL program as well.
And Steve, I'm
Even
going to
that
jump.
information is, sorry, Charles.
Go ahead.
That
Rebecca.
information is all at the top of our site right now. So all of your SBA information that is specific to this appears right at the top of that COVID-19 page at National RIA. And are we ready for questions really quickly? I've gotten several.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on one thing real quick. I've seen a couple pop up on the EIDLs. Even as we mentioned previously, this is with the EIDLs. Yes, there's more funds put in, but SBA has been handling that by region as well. So they neutered the program originally from what it was, a $10,000 grant, to a $1,000 per employee fast track funds. So, initially it was apply, get 10 grand. And then if you move on to PPP, that 10 grand is credited towards that program and it would expand. Instead, it's EIDL, and they've got anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 limits, depending on where you are around the country. And as Kevin and I spoke on it last week, and Kevin, feel free to chime in if you like on this, especially if we get any questions on it. But this is based on, if you have 5 employees, they're going to say, we'll give you $5,000 up front through the EIDL very quickly. Other than that, EIDL has really been clamped down on, and people are being encouraged to go to the PPP program.
Yeah, and Kevin, when you go through this, could you definitely discuss the challenge for most of us on this call is that we don't have employees. We may not even have contractors. And so if most of those funds are being handed out for employees, and I understand that the goal is to keep people working and to keep employees employed. However, especially with a disaster, the EIDL side, is there a way to continue to push to get funds through there even if you don't have employees?
On the idle loan, the answer is yes. And I guess I would throw out a question to our DC guys, because I'm as of right now, it looks like the SBA does not have the application opened up again for the EIDL loan. And my question is, even though there's been more money put into it, will they be opening it back up? Because I was told, I at least reading the news accounts, I'm told that there was significantly more applied for than they had available to release. So if everybody's still in the queue from the first round, are they even going to get to the people that want to come in on a second round? That's just on the idle. On the PPP, I have a couple things to say that you just, in response to what you just asked, but maybe they could chime in on that question.
It might be a research question too. So,
All right.
Matt, go ahead if you want to take a swing at it. I think you're still muted, Matt.
The intent of Congress is something to remember, and that's something that you're going to hear a lot more about, because the SBA has kind of stepped on a couple of things that the law was intended to do. And I think the pressure is going to mount significantly on SBA to get those funds out. So I do believe that more of those funds will be made available. And that's one of the reasons why they put more money into that program.
Okay. I was told there were about $400 billion applied for to idle, and they only had like 10 billion in the first round. So if people are still in line from the first round, then I'm not sure there's much room to get in on, past that. But on the PPP, with regard, Rebecca, you mentioned about number of employees. In that one, remember, Congress's intent was to include independent contractors in the calculation of your payroll. And then about a week into the program, the application process, the SBA came out and said, wait a second, we can't do that, because what's going to happen is that you're going to have independent contractors double dipping. So they said, you're not going to be able to do that. And I don't know if that's an issue that's going to be worked out in this next round or not, but here's something from a personal experience that I've seen happen. I have a nonprofit organization that applied for the PPP, relatively small payroll, but a lot of them are independent contractors. They did it very early. They went into a small community bank and got quick approval with independent contractors worked into the equation. After that fact, the SBA changed the rules, and they've been told that they will get the amount that they were approved for. So for those of you who are out there, at least based on what I've seen, for those of you who are out there who applied early before that change was made, included your independent contractors in the payroll equation, and were given an amount, my understanding is you're going to get that amount. They're not going to come back and change that. Now, for those of you who haven't yet heard, or you were approved after that change was made and you were told that independent contractors were not included in your payroll, as of right now, I guess they're not, but perhaps, and again, our DC guys might be able to give us insight or monitor this, perhaps that'll be corrected, because clearly it was Congress's intent to include them.
And I think the key point on that too is, and Kevin and Matt and Steven as well, whatever you do, do not double dip. That is the piece that eventually they will get back around. It's based on, whether it's your EIN numbers or your social security numbers, they will come back around and say, wait a second, this person applied 2 different areas for the same funds for the same expense. They will track that down eventually. So do not do that, whatever you do. Make sure you're only applying one time for the funds in either one of those programs.
So Charles, what happens again for those of us without employees, considering how many people have already applied, and is it even worth taking the time right now for those of us without employees to at least try the idle program, or is it now trying so hard to keep employees employed and compensated that for us as sole proprietors, that application process may just not even be worth it until we get potentially more funding or a different kind of funding?
Well, the application is only about 3 pages for the PPP program. And it looks like the EIDL program is not going to be for our people who do not have employees. The SBA is kind of pigeonholed that over there, that you need to have employees to get the funds through EIDL. if you want to get the funds through the PPP, you can do that and get your application in, get it in quick. You can go to the SBA website. You can go through our site to get there for it. But you're going to want to go through a local bank who's got an SBA relationship, ideally a bank that you work with. They already know you. That's going to help tremendously. Kind of as Kevin mentioned, it was, and we've seen if the bank doesn't know you, this isn't the time to start a relationship. They're not really looking for that. So focus on that piece of it.
Oh, and
Another
one
quick
thing,
question.
one thing too about this round of funding is that of that 320 billion for PPP, 60 billion is set aside for small banks and credit unions. So again, if the relationship you have is with one of those banks who happens to be an SBA lender, they're going to have a little more ability to work than they had in the last round.
Couple more questions, guys. What if you've had a net loss on your Schedule C, or you've maybe even had multiple years? Is it worth applying for the PPP, or because you've already not had theoretically income, is that just not kind of worth the process?
So I actually had that question last night. I was talking with an accountant. Kevin, jump in if you got something different than this, but literally the accountant said, if your partnership is not showing distributions or showing net profits, you're not going to be able to apply for PPP because there's not a net profit there to show in the first place.
Next question. Does anyone know if these loans are showing up on personal credit reports? So, and then is there a difference between the grant and the loan, or the PPP and the EIDL in terms of showing up on credit reports?
So to start off with, they are a loan, and then they get forgiven down the road once you show that you've spent it correctly. So that's why even last week when we were speaking, apply, you can accept, but before you spend those funds, make sure you know how you're spending them to make sure they're being spent correctly according to SBA's regulations, or they will not be forgiven by the bank who is following SBA regulations. So I know I didn't get to the credit piece of that. I don't know on the credit side of it. I'm not sure how it would apply, but I'm sure they're looking.
If it's truly a loan, again, not knowing, you would need to talk to your tax professional, but if it's truly a loan, I just have to believe that will show up at some point. Next question. Do we have to have filed our 2019 taxes to apply for that loan?
Nope. You will want to Schedule C. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, well, they're going to look at your payroll for a time period from last year to, I believe, February 15th, I think. So you do not have to have filed your 2019.
And one of our participants said that they bank with Chase, who said that there are 100,000 applicants ahead of them and that funds will probably not be available. What are options, either within these programs or anything else that we may know of, to help our owners through this time period? With are there additional possibilities coming, or any ideas?
I think all of us probably have an answer to that. So my contribution to that response would be, if Chase is telling you that, get to another bank. Mm-hmm. The second thing I would say, what was the second part of that? I'm sorry.
Just, they've been told there probably won't be funds by the time.
Again, I'm not a tax guy and I'm not a lawyer, but you could ask when you go to another bank, because Chase has been consistently bad on this. Ask the SBA lender what other 7A loans might fit your mold, because there are others. There's a 7A Express, as I've mentioned, on the previous calls, that is a 36-hour turnaround, and takes care of a lot of the things that we're trying to take care of here. And property investors allows you to buy property with it. So, ask them about those things that aren't these two programs. Because remember, there are 10 7A loans now, and we're only talking about 2 here.
And definitely look into more local banks, or Anna Mills suggested even credit unions have the ability to do some of these loans, and certainly would not have 100,000 people ahead of you at that kind of more local level. I will tell you that we looked into a more local bank, and where we have changed sides of the river and we're trying to establish a different banking relationship. Even though we've been over here a few months, our local regional basically told us the same thing that you've heard from some of your banks, is that longer term customers were going to get funds first. And so, but they were kind enough to give us a list of other regional banks that they knew were participating in the program, and gave us advice to use one of our other relationships ahead of them.
So let me do a kind of a wrap up here. I don't want to keep Matt and Steve on too long here. If you guys want to give us kind of a, where do you see, we're working on CARES 2 now going forward, kind of a quick wrap up of where do you see things going over the next couple of weeks? Is there a flavor you're getting out of DC or the congressional offices? I know that's a hard question, but
Matt, you're still muted, I think, if you're trying to.
All right, I'll go first, Stephen. You can come in and close it like
Perfect.
a relief pitcher. So a couple of things real quick, Charles and Kevin made some really good points. And one of the things to remember, too, is that all of this is going to get worked out once the loan becomes once you apply for forgiveness of the loan. And as long as you adhere to what the intent of Congress was for those loans, they should be forgiven. However, if you have something that you said in the loan application that isn't true, you're going to end up getting yourself in trouble, just like anything else that you might do with a bank. So the other thing that I heard some people have talked about, Charles, I wanted to mention, is some people have gotten approved for the loans, and because they're so confused about the forgiveness of the loans, haven't accepted them yet.
Right.
If they don't accept them soon, they're going to find those funds gone. Correct. So at this point, again, to my point and Kevin's point earlier, the intent of Congress was for those loans to be forgiven, to make them grants. And as long as you adhere to those that intent and are truthful and do keep the payroll going or whatever you use those funds for, you should be forgiven for them. If you're approved for the loan, I would say 99 times out of 100, you ought to take that loan and take it now. I've had that conversation with some of my friends. I'm afraid that they're going to worry themselves out of getting those funds. Just real quick, what it looks like the next phase will be much more specialized help to different industries that are in distress. And certainly, some conversation has come up with access to capital, mortgages, rents, commercial mortgages. So I think likely they will be addressed at some point. I don't know if it'll be in phase quote unquote 4 or 5, but those things are already starting. And I know, Charles, you've had conversations already with folks on Capitol Hill about the importance of access to capital and keeping people in their homes or apartments or in their commercial leases, and to not have this thing snowball into a much worse situation than it already is. Steve?
Yeah, and I also wanted to reiterate, actually, right before this Zoom meeting, I was on a conference call with a member of Congress from North Carolina, and part of the call he was talking about, just what it's like being a congressman during this time, and he's actually has stayed in Washington, D.C., for a majority of the time, and is helping a lot, as you can imagine, his constituents deal with a lot of these programs, and shared a couple examples of small businesses going to apply for PPP and the bank coming back and saying you got denied because, 5 years ago you defaulted on an SBA loan. And the small business said, we've never taken out a small business loan before in the history of our company. We don't understand where you're getting this information. And the member of Congress's office was able to kind of interject and get to the bottom of it pretty quickly. And that small business actually was able to get funds. So make sure that, a lot of times these programs are moving so fast that the banks and these financial institutions have all the correct information for your application, because I know they're trying to process so many so fast. But don't be afraid to push back if they have wrong information.
Hey, Steve, could I throw something in to that point? Charles, as you know, one of the reasons why we're developing these relationships with members of Congress and their staffs on bigger pieces of legislation is to move something like the Seller Finance Relief Act. But when times like this happen, it helps to have those relationships. So when you have a trouble with the SBA, you can call your member of Congress or the Senate, and they know who you are, and their job is to help you. And that's what they're doing right now. And some of our friends on the Hill, Steve and I, are working 18, 20-hour days trying to get people the money that is getting tied up. And the people that have those relationships, just like you talked about with the bank, are getting a lot quicker response from the members' offices than people that they've never heard from before. And that's one of the reasons why, the great work that you guys are doing, building that grassroots network, is going to pay dividends, not just when it comes to legislation, but when it comes to doing business.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate the work you're doing. We're going to be getting some more efforts going out here on the seller financing as we move past some of the COVID and start going back into real work and regular work. We'll have a voter voice piece coming out on that shortly. So just FYI, right now we're pushing. Lori's already posted up where our action center is. And if you want to weigh in, we encourage you across the country to weigh in and push for rental assistance right now to come in this next CARES program, because if our renters who are struggling keep those funds coming through, whether you're a flipper looking at another property or rehab or anything along those lines, folks, if the market starts to tank, and it really tanks, it's not going to be good for any of us. So making sure that rental assistance is a key piece. It's kind of the beginning of the food chain, as it were. So we've got to make sure that it keeps going through this whole chain, this economic chain, and continue to support all of us. So let me wrap up with a couple other quick things real quick. And I'm going to touch on this. One of them, we were on a national call yesterday, Housing Coalition, and the rent strike issue. Let me mention this. I talked about doing a couple interviews, and we've talked about, and we're trying to balance even internally in the office as well as with the coalition, how strong to be on this issue. And the reason I say that is because there's a degree to which I would love to be out there and just be front and center on this issue. And in some sense, like I said, the economic naivete is amazing when you just say, well, rents just disappear and we just don't have to pay it. Folks, there's a whole lot more to it. Now, the reality is they're not getting near the traction that they thought they would. And so they're going to become more rambunctious, more out there. You're going to see the press, especially as we go into next week, covering them. Do not panic. Do not overreact on that. We need to be calm, steady, cool heads on it, and continue to understand and reference the fact that this is the adults, and kind of as Matt and Steve were talking about, in Congress, they want the adults in the room now, and their constituents are asking for their adults to be in the room. They're looking for, the reporters are going to come out and say, look, the kids are throwing a fit. I referenced the fact that it's like somebody watching somebody hold their breath. Well, I'm not giving you my rent money. I'm going to hold my breath. Like, okay, well, then there's a consequence for your action. And I will even say legal aid across the country, from what I've been hearing, has been very good at saying, The rent is still due. Communicate with your property owner, communicate with the manager. The rent is still due. Get in there and communicate and work something out. Now they're encouraging workouts. They're also encouraging moratoriums, but even in the moratoriums, they're still saying the rent's still due. You've got to pay it. So if you've got the funds, please pay it, because otherwise the landlord's going to go under, and that's not good for anyone. So make sure you're participating in that side of the conversation as it's going forward. If you have questions, if there's a media question, please feel free to reach out to me, email me, call me, and we'll help on that. Finally, I want to mention this one, and I'm actually working on an article to come out on this for a little op-ed piece, but you guys get the kind of heads up on it. Short-term rentals. Tourism industry has taken it on the chin right now, and they're going to continue to take it on the chin until things open up. But what I will suggest to you is over the next 6 months, year, 2 years, the short-term rental industry could actually be poised to be in one of the best positions economically, financially, because think about it. If we're in a position where we're not supposed to come together in large groups, do I want to go to a hotel with 300 plus people in it, where everybody's touching everything, touching the elevator, going up and down? Or do I want to go to some place that I know has already been cleaned from the last person who's there, and I'm going to be the only person there? Or I can take my family there and I can be the only person in that area, and I can still insulate from those who are around me. And that piece of it, that niche, I think is going to really benefit the short-term rental folks. So if you've got short-term rentals right now, don't throw in the towel and give up on it. This could be one of the bright spots going forward from what we're seeing. So with that, I'll wrap up a little bit. I don't know if Kevin has any other last comments, but Rebecca, we'll turn it over to you for any questions and moving on.
I don't have anything more, but I'd like to go another hour on rent control.
No.
Just remember, look, as you can see out there, there's a lot of people to either taking advantage of a crisis or in a crisis are reverting back to their political biases. And I think it's very clear to see who on Capitol Hill, who in DC is not doing that, and very clear to see who is doing that. And it's not just rent control. You're starting to hear them now say, we're not coming back to work unless we start talking about new workplace conditions and new pay structure and all that. So get ready for an entire overall challenge to the concept of capitalism, and we're part of that. But this is an opportunity for you as investors and for the investor community led by National RIA to tell the story and define what it is you're here for. What is it exactly do you think housing providers are doing, lefties? And tell that story.
I think that's definitely, our challenge going forward. We've been trying to talk about what it is that we provide as housing providers and painting that picture for the last couple of years. I think we just have to step up and do an even better job at that. So stay tuned as we put those things together and those communication plans together for you. But all that being said, investors are still working and we are still providing housing. And to do that, one of the core things that we have to do is either provide maintenance availability for those residents that we have as rental owners or as lease options, and or begin to or continue to rehab housing so that those who want to have a place to purchase and to live can do so. And our partner in doing that is the Home Depot, and we're so thankful that they are our partners and that they have provided so many things to us during this time. The fact that they have remained open, that they've provided curbside pickup, that they have been able to do delivery, and they have such a great online system has been a real help to our members. And our members get an even better view of this because they get to use the B2B site. And so Brian and Randall are here. They did a little bit of a preview of this for you a couple weeks ago, and we got so many requests to have them go through and talk a little bit more about the capabilities of this program, that we're having them on today to give you an expanded view of what's available to you inside the new online offering. So Brian, I'm going to pass it over to you and let you introduce Randall and what you're going to cover today.
Sounds great. Thank you, Rebecca, and National RIA leadership team and all the attendees that are on this virtual meeting. Great content covered today. I'm going to cover 3 quick things, and then I'm going to pass the call over to Randall Ray. She's our leader for our pro customer experience, and that's every aspect of the experience that you as a investor or rental owner have with the Home Depot. So excited to have her on the call and close it out for us. So one of the things, I added a link to the Home Depot's corporate.homedepot.com/newsroom. And our last update was on April 13th, and how we, the Home Depot, are responding to this current situation and challenge here locally in your communities as an essential retailer. So we're open and we close daily till 6 p.m. Our hours remain unchanged, and we're taking all the safety measures to make sure that you and yours are safe when conducting business in our stores. So we're taking care definitely of our associates and leaning into our values. And we're doing everything we can to follow all the social and physical distance guidelines that are out there by the CDC. So that's one thing. The link will be in the chat for you to have, and then National RIA will be able to communicate as well. But that's our message going forth and how we're adding value to you, our customers, our valued customers during this time. The second thing is for all leaders that are on the call, so all chapter leaders, connect with Randall and I. We would love the opportunity to work with you locally and communicate the Home Depot program to you and your members or participating members. So connect with us there offline. And then in closing, I'll take a chance to just introduce Randall Ray. So Randall, take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the introduction. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. Just bear with me. Okay, here we go. So we have put together an overview of our features that are available for you guys on the Pro Extra B2B website. So you guys can hopefully really leverage those tools that are available, simplify the online shopping experience, and utilize these tools that are there to support you. So as mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, we went over the enrollment process to make sure that your agreement code is properly attached in your Pro Extra Preferred account. And today we are going to go over the setup features, adding users to your account, managing payment methods, and creating product lists. In the upcoming weeks, we'll also continue training on shopping and managing your account. So I am actually going to flip over and do live demos for you on homedepot.com, but just know that these slides are available to you. National RIA will send them out after the call. And they were also sent out if you attended the enrollment training a few weeks ago. So let me share a new screen. Here we go. So the first thing we're going to go over is adding users to our account. This will allow multiple people to shop for business and manage purchasing by adding them to your account. So to get there, you can go to the upper right-hand corner and go to Add or Manage Users. But also on the main screen, there is a quick link here on your profile where you can add and manage users. So in order to add a user, you'll come over here, click Add User. Now there is a difference between adding somebody as a purchaser or as an admin. Purchasers place orders for your business. They can shop online and in store using authorized payment methods. Admins help manage your account. So they can add and edit users as well as payment methods and manage your purchases and account information. So you can put everybody's information in there that you would like to authorize on your account. And then you can edit, resend invitations. You can see that when you've originally, so the user will be notified via email that you've invited them to this account and instruct them to set up their own account. You can see the status here, whether they've activated their account or if it's still pending. Should you get the question that they, didn't receive the email or can you resend it, you can go in here, resend the invitation. You can also remove a user here as well. So before I go on to creating and managing payment methods, does anybody have any questions specifically on adding users?
No questions on that part, Randall.
Perfect. So I'm going to go back to the main screen to add and manage payment methods. Same thing, in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on your name and you can go to cards and accounts. We also have a quick link over here to cards and accounts. And here you can track purchases and add credit cards, gift cards, checking accounts to your account. It is very important that you note here is where you would see an agreement code if you have one. So you want to make sure that not only all of your credit cards, gift cards, checking accounts, everything has your agreement code attached. So this is where you would come and see it. And if it doesn't have one, you can add it here. It's very important that all of your payment methods have the agreement code so they are tracked towards your rebate. To add a card, you'll come over in the upper right-hand corner where it says add card, put in all of the relevant information, and you can also add the agreement code here to that card as well. Another important call out is that even if a card is lost or stolen, you don't want to get into the habit of deleting the card because it will delete the purchase history attached. Instead, you can set it to inactive. And this is where I clicked on actions to the right of the card. You can edit, view purchases. This is where you can authorize phone sales and text to confirm. Text to confirm is will allow you to approve or decline a team member's in-store purchases via text message. You can also set cards to default, and I've been showing this for credit cards, but you can do the same thing for gift cards, PayPal, checking accounts, etc. So Rebecca, are there any questions before I go on to lists?
The question is, where do they find that agreement code? You can find that either through your local RIA, or if you're a member of a local RIA and you're having a hard time because of the COVID crisis reaching them, you can use your login to the national site from your local to find that code as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So last but not least is creating and managing lists. So to get to a list, same thing, upper right-hand corner, go into lists. So this is a great way if you find yourself frequently reordering a lot of the same items, create a list and call it core items. To create a list, you can go right here, create new list, and just say core items, create it. And what this allows you to do is add multiple items to always keep for easy access, quick checkout. So when you open up a list, you can actually select all of the items and instantly add them to your cart. You can, of course, remove them at any time. You can select only certain items to add to the cart as well. In order to add a product, you will search. As you're shopping, you can add at any time. In case you guys can't tell, I've been wanting to add some outdoor patio furniture. And right here, as you're shopping, you could just click save to list. Let's see. And you can add it to an existing list, or if you wanted to create a new list while shopping, you can do that right here as well. So I think that is the gist of what I wanted to cover with you all today. My final call out would be Should you not, have our user guide readily available to you, or, you're having trouble with something, this Explore Features option up at the top left-hand corner is a really, really great tool. It'll pretty much take you through everything that our guide takes you through as well, in terms of adding users, cards, text to confirm, lists, and the rest. So Rebecca, I'll open it up for any questions, and we look forward to going through the next training guides here in a couple of weeks.
Can we talk about a feature that I think is coming soon? So I know everybody's always hesitant to talk about coming soon items because you don't know the timeline specifically on it. But with being able to create the list now, and I saw that down there you can do the get a quote. I know VPP is something, the volume pricing program is something that at National RIA has been a special incentive to our members to use. They can get their rebate on top of VPP pricing, which can give you a really great savings. Can you talk about potentially what that's going to look like and using the site for doing that?
I apologize. I'm not able to speak to it as comfortably as I'd like to. Brian, if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free, but I can definitely get more information and follow up.
For sure. Thanks for that, Randall. And so we, let's do this. I'd like to quickly go over the different, and this won't answer it all, the question, but it will at least give some context around where this is going. So we have the Pro Extra program, and then you have the Pro Extra Preferred. Being a member of National RIA grants you access to the online pro experience that Randall just talked about. So if not, you actually don't end up in the pro online experience. The pro online experience is really is built and created for you, by you as a landlord, as a real estate investor, with really making that experience better for you to be able to conduct business or help your teams that administer the purchasing or whatever it is, your subcontractors, get in and out of the stores faster. So I would say that as we evolve the online experience, there will be more opportunities for deeper savings and more promotional activity. There is a pilot we're doing, and I can touch on this, where we're offering our bid room, but it's really to a small group of customers, and it's tied to our managed account customers. So you as a member of National RIA, you may not be a managed account by an outside sales rep. So there's certain things that are tied to that. That's why we can't just answer specifically as to where that's going. But we are testing some things to where we can offer some deeper savings online. But the beauty of our partnership with National RIA and all our chapters is whatever savings you're getting at the store, this 2% rebate that you receive 2 times a year is on top of whatever you're getting at the store. I mean, I know veterans that are getting savings at the store. Then on top of that, this is 2%. So there's also a 20% off in paint from $1 savings. And there is a cabinet program, there is an appliance program, but we're working on revamping that and adding in the ProLine experience. And I'll be candid with everyone here. Randall is the leader is going to help us get there. All the chapter leaders on the call, my hope is let's just find and continue to grow and help our members get the basics down, right? Because we still have challenges and opportunities to basics. And this program is not a program that the store associates know about. So I hear this all the time. Why don't the stores know about this? I don't want them to know about this. This is not a discount program for the public. This is a benefit for being a member of the local National RIA. So I hope that adds some context to it. And I know that there's competitors out there that do great things for you in your communities. I'll tell you, we at the Home Depot, we're going to continue to strive to serve you and be your partner in this business. So I hope that answers the answer to VPP. That's all I've got there.
Awesome. Ron, we do have one question. Many of our members are also members of the military. And when they're in store, they have no problem. They have great service and get that military discount. But there's no kind of mechanism for doing that online. do we expect that potentially we might be able, the question from the member is, do we expect that at some point we might be able to build that in so that the military members can get that experience online in the same great way that they do in the stores?
If we don't mind, let's get that member's information, and then I don't know the answer to that. So I do want to just say I don't know.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
jump in and say it's definitely something we're aware of and want to address, and in the pipeline. In terms of a timeline, I can't speak to that either.
Awesome. We appreciate that that's in the pipeline. I have to laugh, by the way, because I'm getting a text from my guys right now that are in line to buy paint and asking 100 questions. I'm like, guys, I'm on a Home Depot call right now. I need to give me a break. But our paint program is absolutely incredible. If you're not using it, make sure that you take advantage of that, because that's an at the register 20% off discount. And all you have to do is use the primary number that you've signed up in the program with, and it's right there. It's so simple and easy to do. I don't have other questions here, but just to let everybody know, in a couple weeks, we'll do another supplement, talk about the QuickBooks export and many of the other pieces that are inside the program. If you want to know about it ahead of time, Randall has that great piece of information that she's sharing with you that Lori will be emailing out through her slides. I think there's a link there, isn't there, Randall, that they could go explore that on their own if they wanted to. Obviously, she showed you how to get to that FAQ inside the site. You saw one of those blocks there actually takes you down that path. So if you have questions, you can do that, or you can always reach out to one of us here at National RIA, and Brian has made himself available with the information that he's given you here in the chat bar. But we're very appreciative to our partners there at the Home Depot. Thank you so much for supporting us through this time and sponsoring these broadcasts to keep our people up to date. The only other thing, I'm going to circle back now, Charles, really quickly. We did have a question that I think is important that we didn't cover. There's one piece of the CARES Act that, as we understand it, talked a little bit about mortgage forbearance. We've not had those conversations on these calls. I know that we didn't know exactly what that was going to look like for the longest time. I'm not sure if it has even been outlined yet specifically, but what do we need to know about that? What do we know about it? What do our members need to keep in mind and prepare for as that opens up and becomes available? And can we hope to have more, is there a timeline for potentially knowing more about it?
So actually, I was on a conference call yesterday with Vice President Pence, Secretary Carson, and Commissioner Montgomery. And Brian was talking about the forbearance process, what it's looking like, both Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and then also coming through FHA and FHA insured loans, and reaching out. And there's a lot of folks do not know if they have an FHA insured loan. That's one of the first pieces. So FHA is trying to do some outreach on it, and they're encouraging folks. We've talked about this over the last several weeks. It's communication right now. It means reaching out to your bank. It's going to take a little time maybe for them to do some digging to find out if you are FHA insured or not, who actually has your mortgage, if it is actually Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, if they have it. Then there's a forbearance process. And quite frankly, they are scrambling to work through that process as well. There are additional funds set aside for this. They know that they're going to be coming back for more funds. As that comes forward, we're going to share some more of that out. But again, the initial process of what was put forward in the CARES program was up to 3 months, and then that 3 months would go on at the back of the loan. They've also opted for, if you want to do 3 months and then pay that out over the next 12 months. So you could just increase your amount and it doesn't add on to the back. But those are options that they're putting out there, and different banks and different programs are settling on different pieces of that. So it's really going to be communicating with the bank, finding out what your options are. But the thing I would encourage most is reach out to your bank, reach out to your mortgage holder to find that information out. That's the first thing you got to do, find out which options they're even going to allow right now. And also I'll mention, since I got it here, I was getting ready to head there shortly. So I got my card ready to work on it. So.
Listen, as rehabbers and rental owners, business is still open for us, and we've got to find ways to manage that. So along those lines, next week we'll be having Larry Goins talk to us about how he is working to keep his business open, what's been working for them as a wholesaler, kind of how they've worked through this process, and on the retail side, what that's looked like as well. So he will be here next week to talk to us about that. There'll be an outline coming to you with the opportunity to sign up for next week's call. But that's all that we have for today. Ron, I'm going to turn it back to you, sir, to close us out.
All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for attending. We thank our presenters, Charles Tasso, Matt Keelen, Stephen from the Keelen Group, and also Kevin Coughlin. As always, we greatly appreciate our Director of Operations, Lori Hudson, and Rebecca McLean for putting all of this together and all their hard work. And we will see you guys next Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, we also obviously thank Home Depot as well. We'll see you guys all at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay safe and stay healthy.